Call the meeting to order of the Patton Township Board of Supervisors meeting, February 10th, 2021. I'll make a note that the Board of Supervisors will, after we adjourn this meeting, the Board of Supervisors will continue to meet in executive session to discuss a personnel matter. Next item on our agenda is public comments. Have we received any public comments? Doug or Alex? Not that we know of. Okay, we'll move on to agenda item 3, presentations, public hearings. 3A is funding the proposed Whitehall Road Regional Park. So let's see, how do we want to start this?
Well, if you'd like, I can review the information on
Okay,
the agenda, and then I think it falls to you then to.
is Larry on here?
Pardon?
Is Larry Pegger also on?
He was sick today,
Oh, okay.
so.
All right, so it'll be up to my inexpert review. Go ahead, Doug.
Well, I
You
think
can
we've got
start.
enough information to get to the basics, but this whole regional park program started about 16 years ago. The university offered some property to the COG for parks. The parks ended up, the COG ended up purchasing what is now the Oak Hall Regional Park and property for Whitehall Road Regional Park. And then in the interim, Hess Fields in Harris Township was also acquired by the Council of Governments. And those 3 parks became what is now the Regional Park Program, being funded under COG cooperatively by all the the participating municipalities, which is the 5 Patton, Ferguson, Harris College townships and State College Borough. Halfling Township does not participate in the Regional Parks Program. As noted on page 3, at the top of page 3 of the agenda, there was a $7.9 million loan that was secured in 2008 to do upgrades, extensive upgrades at both Park Forest Pool and the Welch Pool in the borough. That loan is scheduled to be paid off in 2028, and there's still a little more than $3 million remaining on that loan. It was a $7.5 million loan, was secured in 2011, was secured for phase 1 construction of Whitehall and Oak Hall. Oak Hall Park, phase 1 of that has been completed. We're talking about Whitehall Road phase 1 right now. There's approximately $4.7 million remaining in principal balance on that loan. Center Region Parks and Rec did take bids in December. They were opened, and they've been looking at those bids since then. They did provide a recommendation to the Finance Committee at their February 1st special meeting. And that gets us to the funding proposal - current situation. Some of the low bids were disqualified, but at this time, the low qualified bids for the several contracts that are required for phase 1, plus there's a number of additional items that are listed on the funding current sheet that was provided to the Finance Committee, include different equipment that's being purchased through CoStars, which is the state cooperative bidding process, and then there's a lot of professional services that remain to be paid for. But all those items put together equal about $6.4 million. Currently, there's about $5.6 million, rounding everything, in available funds on hand and grant awards, which leaves the whole project short about $800,000. Note that those bids did not include the restroom facilities, a maintenance building, or irrigation on some of the fields. Those are also been estimated to cost a total of about $775,000, which gives us a total shortfall of $1.577 million. There have been some proposals put forward to cover part of that shortfall. There were two items identified by COG staff. One, excess interest paid delays, which is money that COG currently has on hand that was to be used at some point for debt service, but hasn't been needed as of yet. That's $245,000. There are also some rental funds that have been collected by Parks and Rec in total of about $45,000. To make use of those funds, we'll take COG general forum to approve a budget amendment. They're in discussions that COG has had prior with their bond counsel, or not bond counsel, excuse me, the refinancing consultant, let me put it that way. Bond counsel is another person, a different body. They anticipate if they refinance both the park and pool loans, they may be able to realize a savings of about $300,000 that could also be used for the park. There was a special meeting, as I noted, on February 1st of the Finance Committee. The Finance Committee put forth a recommendation to recommend that they retain Chris Gibbons, who's the financial advisor, would provide more information on the refinancing. The amount to be refinanced, or the amount to be financed, including the refinancing of the pool and park loans, is somewhere in the neighborhood of $10.4 million. Mr. Gibbons will, if retained, will give us what that final actual amount needs to be. At this point, the recommendation is that these loans would be refinanced in such a manner that the annual amount that the municipalities pay to COG or contribute to COG to pay for that debt service would not increase, at least in the short term. It would increase, in my understanding of how this would be, after from 2029, when the pool loan was supposed to have been paid off. So there would be some increase in debt service, but it meant to be level from where it is currently. The recommendation potentially involves, noted, an additional $2 million worth of borrowing. Again, that final amount will come from Mr. Gibbons once all the numbers have been verified. There were several agenda attachments that were provided along with the agenda. There was a detailed cost estimate of all the costs that would be included in the park. There was a concept plan and also a bulleted list that had been provided by Pam Salakangas of what all the improvements would be as part of phase one. There were the bid tabulations from December 2020. Those are the original bids that were opened. And then there was a summary of comments that had been provided prior by the municipalities regarding this refinancing effort. And then finally, there was a list of, there was a spreadsheet that showed, yes, the financing, the debt history for the pools when those were originally incurred, the debt amounts, the debt service amounts now, and several other items of interest. So we also was a computation of interest that had been paid by Patton Township that Larry Peger, our finance director, put together a request of Mr. Trevino. And I think I'll ask if there's any questions on any of that information at this point that needs to be clarified.
I note that Joe Vigilone and Eric Norenberger from COG are both here to respond to questions if anyone wants any more information.
Yeah, Pam Salakangas is with us also if need be.
Oh, sorry, Pam. You came on a little late. I see that. I see your window now. As your finance committee representative from the board, of course, I participated in these meetings. And so the summary is, as Doug has already presented, there are a couple additional things I want to mention. Is a spreadsheet that Joe had prepared. This one, Alex, if you can find that one.
The one before that, 3A5 or
Doug, it was the
the
one
debt
with
history. 3A.5, Alex, if you can.
and now you gotta scroll up to the top. You're on page 2 right there.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Thanks.
Yeah. So the over at the very far right where it says total, there are 3 columns total. And if you go all the way down to the bottom of the middle column, next one, right, where it says 5.707, right there. The 2 loans, the Pools loan and the Whitehall Regional Park loans have both been refinanced before. And Joe had calculated the amount of savings over the life of the 2 loans that those refinancing had generated. And so we see that when the 2 loans were originally approved by COG, those amounts are up at well, I don't see them. This is basically an amortization schedule. The 2 loans that were approved were $5.707 more than the current balance due. I guess if we were to continue paying out these 2 loans till they're paid off completely without refinancing them. So basically, COG has saved the municipalities $5.7 million by doing the refinancing. Well, it was actually the COG approved the refinancing, but it was actually Recreation and Parks Authority. Is that right, Joe? That actually processed the refinancing, because they're the ones that handled the financing for the parks.
They did, and the reasoning for the 5.7, in addition to the refinancing savings, was also one of the projects came in under budget, and then as well, some of the delays have allowed us to pay as we didn't have to draw as much principal going on, so we were able to save some interest in that. But there's been a significant amount of savings in all 3 aspects.
So my point is that even if we now approve an additional around 2 million or whatever, plus or minus, of spending towards the Whitehall Road Regional Park, we still come under the total amount that the municipalities would have expended had we not done any refinancing of those 2 loans. So that's one point that convinced me that we should go ahead and increase the funds to the Whitehall Road Regional Park so we can complete phase 1. And that completion includes adding funding for the restroom facility, the irrigation of the fields, and what was the third one? Joe, I can't remember the third thing we're funding.
Maintenance building.
Maintenance building.
Oh, yeah.
Maintenance storage building.
Maintenance storage building. So what we have to decide tonight as a board is whether we agree with the Finance Committee's recommendation to refinance these loans. I think Elliot has his hand up. Yeah, go ahead, Elliot.
I would move approval of going ahead with this with the full program.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, Betsy seconded. Any further discussion of this? Is Yes, Anita, go ahead.
Just a question. I noted that Ferguson in the Finance Committee objected. Do all of the townships have to approve this for it to go forward?
Correct. Has to be unanimous.
But I see, after the vote, could I suggest, if we feel strongly on it, that I don't know how one diplomatically tells Ferguson to please join to do it, that I'd like to see this not only approved, but with, I don't know, Doug, could your people call their people? Could there be some way to, if 4 of the 5 are in favor of this, it would, in my opinion, be a shame to have it stopped by one. But
that issue can be discussed at the Finance Committee and at the General Forum.
okay,
I mean,
well, we'll all tune in. Thank you.
Yeah, that should go ahead.
Can you summarize what Ferguson's objections were?
Joe, you want to take that, or Eric?
I would prefer Eric would do that because they're on there, but I don't think it's a financial in nature.
Yeah, I think it's a complicated objection and one that I will try to summarize, but I don't want to be speaking necessarily for the Ferguson board or their chair, but my understanding is that their goal right now, and it is summarized in the summary of financial positions that Doug mentioned earlier that was presented to the Finance Committee. They're looking to only invest more if it's the savings from the refinancing, so that the restrooms could be included. They feel that the project has been overpromised and underfunded, maybe, is one way to look at this.
If you can go watch their meeting on CNET, if you'd like. It took about, I think the whole discussion that they had was a little over 30 minutes. So, all the CNET recordings are all bookmarked, so you can find it fairly easily.
For sure.
It was about a 30-minute discussion. So I would suggest, that would be my suggestion, is to go get it straight from them.
Yeah, thanks. Good idea.
Sorry, I'm back. Not sure what happened there, but I think that what we've been trying to do in recent months is be very transparent about the current state of the project and the current realities of the funding for the project, and try to get as close as possible to a project scope that fits the funding that's available. So we've got this gap that Doug identified earlier and Joe spoke of it, as well as Dan, and we're that far apart, and I think there's some objection to paying any more for the project on the part of the Ferguson board based on their last position. They do want to see the restrooms included, which were not part of the bid package that was out in the fall. And that's an additional cost, and that would increase the amount that needs to be funded by the 5 municipalities together. That's a real quick summary. I'm not sure if I got it exactly right, but hopefully that's close enough for you, Anita.
Sorry, Elliot, you have your hand up.
But I think the motion that's on the table would solve this problem as far as we're concerned. Is that right? Or address this problem?
Well, the Finance Committee is meeting tomorrow morning, so I will certainly make our position as Patton Township Supervisors clear that we strongly support this completing the phase 1 of this park. Well, I think everybody wants the park. Everybody wants the park completed. So it's just a matter of trying to make sure we have all 5 municipalities to vote yes, and whether there's some final negotiations that have to take place with Ferguson so that the majority of their board will agree with the rest of us. that's to be seen, because I don't, Joe and Eric have given us, the Finance Committee, a rundown of what the costs are going to be if we stop this project. We have already invested a lot of money in this project. And not only that, we stop the project, the money's still going to be spent for things we haven't been billed for yet, you know, engineering and all kinds of things. So it's just, anyway, to me, it makes no sense to stop the project. Pam Robb?
I agree with you 100%. Is there a deadline that we must meet in order that everything is not lost?
Pam has her hand. Go ahead, Pam.
The only thing I could partially answer for that is we do have open bids at this time. We have not awarded any bids. We did ask for a bid extension from all bidders for 45 days, which takes us to March 30th, 2021. So if after that point we don't have clear direction on the refinancing, we would probably have to reject all bids and then go to bid again, which doesn't really cost us any money, but it could, it doesn't cost us to do that work, but it could increase those bid pricings. And we have very competitive bids right now. So there is an opportunity that possibly that if we get a positive vote to move forward, we can be working on the refinancing and start the project simultaneously.
Pam, thank you, and Joe, for all your hard work. I just have a problem that with the recommendation from our Finance Committee, who has reviewed this thoroughly, that they still have objections. I'm for it. Let's take a vote. Let's take a vote.
Any more questions or comments? If not, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 So nobody's opposed. I didn't hear any. All right, so motion passes. There was one more thing I was going to say about this. Sorry, senior moment, it's gone. All right. So Doug, I assume, Eric, you want something in writing from us? Can Doug send you, or do you want me to send you an email saying we support
I think we're
If something in writing would be helpful, but I think you'll be able to represent the opinion of your board tomorrow morning at the meeting, and that will be what we need tomorrow morning. Thank you. Appreciate
Okay,
it.
you're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you very much, all three of you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Oh, you know, one thing we didn't agree to was the supporting the two COG budget amendments that would be required to redirect up to $291,500 towards the Whitehall Road Regional Project. So,
So moved.
so let's move. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Not, let's vote. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Oh, okay, that's approved. All right, thanks for staying on there, Eric, to hear that vote as well. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Next item is the Public Safety Report, the 2020 year-end report for the Police Department. Chief Jolly, you're up.
Thank you. So yeah, at the end of January, every year I do complete a year-end review for the police department. So the 2020 year-end report was completed and submitted to the board. I'm not going to read the whole four-page report verbatim, but I just figured I'd go through and at least hit on some of the highlights that we wanted to make sure everybody was aware of from 2020. So our department ended 2020 with a complement of 19 officers and 2 police secretaries, which is our normal staffing. We do have one detective whose primary duties are to handle and investigate drug-related incidents in Patton Township. They are a liaison with the Attorney General's office and the Center County Drug Task Force. That detective arrested 6 individuals for multiple counts of delivery of controlled substances, including marijuana, heroin, cocaine, fentanyl, and prescription drugs. In working with the Center County Task Force, though, about 40 drug delivery cases were opened against individuals who were trafficking controlled drugs in our region. They have seized about $10,000 in U.S. currency and about $5,000 in assets. We've seen a little bit of a shift that the drug detectives and the narcotics officers here in the region are starting to focus more on what we would consider a hard drug. So not necessarily as much marijuana, looking at methamphetamine, heroin, and any of the opioids that we're seeing coming through our area. Also of note, though, is that our drug detective was intimately involved and still is with a grand jury investigation. So this is a large scale investigation involving crack cocaine, heroin, and fentanyl. And it was coming in from the eastern part of our state in New Jersey. So that's something that is currently being worked on, and we're probably going to end up seeing quite a multitude of arrests as a result of that investigation. So they've been doing a fantastic job throughout 2020 doing the drug enforcement. Our officers in our agency, we still emphasize training. A great deal amount of time goes on training for the department. Their officers have yearly training that they must complete. Like I mentioned last board meeting, they currently are doing that. That's through the Municipal Police Officers Training Commission, or MOPEC. We have to do 4 3-hour classes that are mandated every year. And then we have many in-house things that we also complete, including CPR, AED, first aid, firearms, taser, baton, and things like that. So there's many. We listed a bunch of the other ones that we did this year. Some include DUI enforcement, crisis negotiator training, drug recognition expert training, and collision reconstruction training, just to name a few. There's quite a list there of many trainings that we were involved in. Our agency does continue to be a participant in regional activities. We're members of the Center County Alcohol Task Force, the Center County Drug Task Force, and the Tactical Response Team. This year, in 2020, our department did receive grant funding again from Buckle Up, Pennsylvania, smooth operator and aggressive driving enforcement. So we did conduct 2 different waves, and that resulted in 96 contacts and 35 citations being issued. Our officers also in 2020 continue to be trained on and carry naloxone. Naloxone is a medication that, when administered via the nasal spray, can actually reverse the effects of an opioid overdose. We did use that and administer that 4 times in 2020. And just to give a little bit of perspective, we reached out to Center Lifelink as well. Center Lifelink in 2020 reported 152 overdose calls in Center County. And they used Narcan 14 times. So that's just a little bit of a perspective for what's going on around our area. We do continue to carry and recertify and be trained on tasers. And there was 1 taser deployment in 2020. And as I'd mentioned before, we do have 1 officer who is a drug recognition expert. And that officer was involved in 25 evaluations of impaired drivers in 2020. Unfortunately, the annual Patton Township Safety Fair had to be canceled in 2020 due to COVID. We are very much so looking forward to 2021 and hoping that we're going to be able to have our event because it's such a fantastic event for the community. And we really truly treasure our working relationship that we have with the Patton Township Business Association, who is just such a strong supporter of that event. And really, we couldn't pull it off, especially not the magnitude that we can with their involvement. But just so everybody wants to maybe mark their calendars, we're looking for October 9th of 2021. And hopefully we're going to be able to again, be at a point with this pandemic that we're going to be able to have that in-person event. So we're remaining very hopeful and optimistic about that. We do continue to house a drug take backs here at the township and right in the lobby. We did collect about 150 pounds of unused and unwanted medications in 2020. It's down about 100 pounds from 2019. Obviously, COVID, I think, was a big factor of that. There were certain times also that the lobby was not available or open to the public. So we're hoping to be able to maybe get that amount up a little bit this year. In fact, just started conversations about a drug take back event with Wegmans, looking at maybe in April. So we'll be giving more information about that coming up. We did have a retirement. Officer Jeff Shoemaker served the residents of Patton Township for 31 years. So he retired in December, and we have hired Officer Brian Staley, who is getting very close to going out on his own shortly here. So we are back to our full complement in patrol. Our calls for service decreased from about 5,428 in 2019 down to about 4,450 in 2020. That number does not include the 1,137 traffic stops that we did conduct in 2020. And the most common area that we saw was in the traffic category. And that could be anywhere from traffic control, monitoring school traffic, disabled vehicles, assisting our public works department. But we did see a little bit of a decrease from 2019 when we had 762 of those types of calls. Our accidents also reduced though. In 2020, we had 244 accidents in the township. And that was collisions on private property or on our roadways. 65 of those were a little bit more serious in nature. So either there was an injury reported or we had to have a vehicle that had to be towed. So our serious accidents went down from 2019, we had 83, again down to 65 in 2020. And we had 379 accidents in 2019. So quite a significant decrease in 2020 down to 244. And we did not have any fatal crashes in 2020. Bike patrol, again, the guys did a fantastic job this year on bike. We really used them, especially at the beginning of COVID in April, to spread the word about social distancing and masking, particularly in the parks. But also, again, probably the best way we have to get our officers out into the public and be approachable is by putting them on the bicycle. So they have done a fantastic job. Saw an increase of about 105 miles, 110 miles from what they rode in 2019. Again, just remain very active out in the community on bike. So, again, just to wrap this up, again, not going into every single detail that we had there, but our officers, the support staff we have, they just continue to do a fantastic job. I'm very, very proud of the agency, very proud of all the employees, all the staff that we have here. But they do a fantastic job, do a very diligent service to this community. And we continue to provide our services in a courteous, professional, and respectful manner. And we really appreciate all the cooperation we get from the community. I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any, just from the 2020 year-end report.
Okay, I was muted. Any questions or comments from the board? Let's see, what do I have to do here? All right, I'll go back to gallery view so I can see everyone. I don't see any hands raised. I would like to just congratulate you, Chief, and your force for another excellent year. The community really appreciates everything you and your department do, and we would have trouble recruiting people to move to our township if we didn't have a great police department. If there had been any problems with our police, that would have been certainly something people might refer to as the reason they chose not to live in our township. So we want to do everything we can to keep supporting you and your staff. And I'll just mention to anybody viewing this recording that at our last meeting, the Board of Supervisors requested that our manager draft a letter supporting the reclassification of our firefighters and our police force in the COVID-19 vaccine priority list to move them to the 1A priority list, because they are definitely our first responders on the scene. And I'm glad to know that letter was put out. Pam, Rob, you have a comment?
Yes. Since you brought it up, I was going to wait to the end of our meeting, but at our public safety meeting yesterday, the Fire Chief Baird wanted to say, he started the meeting with thanking all of our board members for that letter. And he was very appreciative to make that announcement prior to saying anything, to make sure each and every one of our board members, that the letter that went out to the governor, the state, the officials, the county, even their letter, they said was overlooked, but by us joining as a board, it's moving. And Chief, I have to say thank you. Thank you for all that you do. You continue to make meetings for the community, diversity meetings you make, your training. It's outstanding. And if you didn't get a chance to hear, I was on a panel for people of color working in public office. I commended this board and especially our police department, because the community needed to know what kind of individuals I'm serving with and who I truly respect. So I truly say, Doug, thank you as our township manager. You do an outstanding job, and we could never say thank you enough. And to Chief, and for me, to this board and our staff, Alexandra, Nicole, Larry, thank you. And to the rest of the staff, Patton Township is number one. Whether we hear it, but it's out there, our reputation is preceding itself. So thank you again, each and every one of you, for making me serve on an outstanding board.
Thank you, Pam. I think you spoke for all of us. All right, Chief, I think you still have another report, your January 2021 report.
I do, yeah. In fact, actually, I have a couple other different things to show as far as our use of force stats too. But real quickly, I just wanted to mention, since it was just brought up as well, Mr. Erickson did ask me to send the letter that was crafted from our board to all the police chiefs, and then also to a couple fire companies here in Center County. And same thing, super positive response back. A couple of them were very excited about it, taking it to their boards for hopefully to have the exact same type of letter written from other boards here in the county. So very, very great leadership from Patton Township Board on that. When truly the first responders appreciate it. So, yep. So I, again, just in keeping with the spirit and just trying to be as transparent as possible. And part of my work on the task force on policing in communities of color, I developed this report. It's brand new, so I'm happy to hear any critiques that you may have, but I just figured it'd be good to maybe get this information into the hands of the board as well. But we put together a document here for our calls for service and our use of force for 2020. Our officers, again, I just said in the 2020 year-end report, we had 4,450 calls for service in 2020. We made 188 arrests, so about 4.2% of our calls ended up in arrest. Of those 4,450 calls, our officers had to use force during 11 incidents in 2020. And just to kind of as a reminder, it's in our use of force policy that's online, but our officers have a few different types of force that they can use. They have an escort, which is for passive resistance, no pain, some physical form of maneuvering, OC spray. They have the taser or the threat of taser, control and compliance, which is typically the most common one that's used, which would be leverages, takedowns, holds, and come-alongs. They have unarmed striking techniques, striking implements, which would be like the batons, and then beanbag projectiles, and then deadly or potentially deadly force. So then to break these down a little bit further, I put some pie charts together. So again, our total use of force incidents, we had 11. 7 of those were with individuals who were white, 3 with individuals who were African American, and 1 with an Asian individual. By gender, 9 were with males and 2 with females. And then to kind of break it out a little bit further, so the use of force by race and gender, we had 6 who were white males, 1 was a white female, 2 African American males, 1 African American female, and 1 Asian male. Again, control and compliance is the most commonly used. So of the 11, 7 times the force used was control and compliance. 2 times officers pointed their duty weapons. Once there was a use of a taser, and then once there was the threat of a taser. Again, so to break these down again a little bit further, the control and compliance by race and gender, 3 were with white males, 2 African-American male, 1 white female, and 1 African-American female. The threat of taser was with 1 white male. The use of the taser was on a white male, and then pointing the duty weapon by race and gender, 1 was with an Asian male and 1 was with a white male. There were no injuries reported by officers or subjects on whom force was used in 2020, and we did not receive any use of force complaints from any citizens in 2020 as well. So I'd be happy to stop there for a second and answer any questions, or again, happy to take any critique, anything else you'd like to see added to the report. I just thought it was good information to share at this point.
Yes, Anita, go ahead.
This is excellent. It should be a model for all the townships. Is there a meeting of police chiefs? You can't meet for coffee anymore with the COVID restrictions, but I think this is superb and should be a model that should be shared with the other townships in the county. Thank you. Excellent.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Any other comments? Okay, Chief, go ahead with your January report.
Okay, yep, and I also did include, just for, I don't know how much you want me to go into it, but just maybe the board has the ability to look at, I actually then broke it down from 2015 to 2020. So there is a second report in there that has all of our use of force. Just to give you the main components of that, in that time from 2015 to 2020, we handled 21,800 calls for service, made 1,236 arrests, so about 5.7%. And then we did have 67 use of force incidents throughout that time. And then, like I said, I broke them down by category as well. If you'd like, I can go through the whole thing, but I just figured I'd at least make a comment and let you know that that information is available and out there.
Anyone from the board want to make a question or comment? Yes, Pam, go ahead, Pam.
Chief, I just have one question on the training. Is there any training on the mental health dealing with children? Since they had an incident with, you know, the 9-year-old being not here, but being handcuffed. I watched that video over and over again, and it was the female officer that almost got the child to, you know, trust the officer. And it was the male officers that kept insisting that the female officer pepper sprayer, and she was 9. So my interest is, are there training in mental health and even dealing with children in that kind of incident?
Yes, so to answer that, the officers do get that in CIT. There is a block about dealing with juveniles and mental health issues in CIT. But MOPEC actually hit the nail right on the head this year. One of our required classes is juvenile justice, and it addresses those exact things that you're discussing right now. So all officers in the state of Pennsylvania will receive training on juvenile justice, dealing with juveniles with mental health issues, and just really the juvenile justice system the whole way through. You know, contact to, you know, everything the whole way down through if they do enter the court system. So yes, yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay.
Yeah, continue.
Okay, very good. So the January 2021 report is included in your materials. We had 115 traffic stops, 28 citations, 18 parking tickets, and 5 criminal arrests. There was no bike patrol in the month of January. We did have a male who was arrested for possession with intent to deliver and delivery of controlled substances. The male was dealing heroin and cocaine throughout our community. We had an individual who was arrested for retail theft and 1 for DUI. And our officers served 3 warrants of the 23 that they attempted and conducted 15 vacation home checks. Patton Township Police Department officers did use force during 1 incident in January 2021. The officers were attempting to serve a 302 warrant. The subject of the warrant was uncooperative and charged at the officers. The officers used control and compliance techniques to gain control of the subject. And again, no injuries were reported to the subject or officers, and the individual was transported safely to the hospital to get the treatment that he needed. Community relations wise, Officer Tuskovich conducted a run, hide, fight drill for the students at Park Forest Middle School. Myself and Officer Sunderland actually assisted with him in doing that drill. And again, since the students are back in person learning again, our officers were very active in the school zones during the student drop off and pickup. Training for the month of January, Detective Snyder, Officer Schaefer, and Officer Tuskovich attended tactical response team training. And as I'd mentioned, all officers began their in-service mandate training. Again, they received 12 hours from MOPEC. This year's topics are legal updates, recognizing and responding to individuals with special needs. And there was a very strong emphasis on de-escalation, juvenile justice that we just spoke about, and then child victims of human trafficking was the last topic. And again, our officers are receiving in-house training on use of force, and that includes our taser and our batons. I attended meetings first for the Task Force on Policing and Communities of Color on the 5th, the 8th, the 12th, the 19th, and the 26th. We've been meeting very frequently, getting a lot of work and making a lot of progress there. A Campus Community and UD meeting on the 25th, and then the Patton Township Business Association meeting. We did have a performance report for an officer from January 14th, talking about opioid overdoses and the use of naloxone. On January 14th, Officer Snyder responded to an address on Tofttrees Avenue for a report of a unresponsive male. Upon arrival, the officer found the male to have a weak pulse and agonal breathing and realized he was in the advanced stages of an opioid overdose. Officer Mitch Snyder administered a dose of naloxone and placed the male in a recovery position. The male revived after a few minutes, at which point EMS arrived to treat him further. But it was due to his quick actions that a patient suffering from a potentially fatal opioid overdose recovered. So his actions reflect the highest credit on himself and also on the Patton Township Police Department. We're very proud of that one. We did give out a few awards here at the beginning of the year. Generally, again, we do it in person and more likely before the board, but I wanted to kind of let you know our officers back on January 22nd of 2020, it was Officers Vardell, Schaefer, and Finocchio performed CPR on an individual who made a full recovery. So those three officers received the life-saving award, which I think that we have a copy in the packet there, so you can take a look at that. And then on July 7th, there was a motor vehicle accident where the individual actually had a medical issue. And our officers, again, did CPR and used our AED to shock the patient. And that was with Officer Sunderland, Officer McElrath, and Sergeant Albright. And again, the three of them also received the life-saving award for that incident. Our record list, the calls from January of 2021, we had 310 total. We're down some from 355 in December of 2020. Again, the most frequent was traffic. We had 71 traffic calls and followed up shortly by health and safety EMS assist, where we had 56 of those. And I'd be happy to answer any questions about that.
Any comments or questions from the board? I don't see any, so thank you very much, Chief Jolly.
Thank you.
All right, what's next? Item 5, Public Works, 5A, grant application to Hamer Foundation. Doug, you want to take this? Doug, you're muted.
Sorry
Okay.
about that. I had advised the board at the last meeting that we were working on this and getting ready to turn it in at the end of January. Ms. Katie Ombalski, who's a consultant working with the Open Space Stewardship Committee, has worked closely with the Hamer Foundation. They're a local foundation that provides funding to conservation efforts. They did actually provide us a $750,000 grant back in 2017 to help us with the purchase of the Grays Woods Preserve. Miss Ombalski put together this grant application to them. It was submitted at the end of January. I won't go through it in detail, but it is to prepare some conservation plans for the Grays Woods Preserve and also redo the forestry stewardship plan on the Grayswood, or on the Haw Family Preserve, do conservation planning on the Grays Woods Preserve, and then also to do some property management activities, which would include some forestry management activities that might include deer fencing and some habitat enhancement programs. In total, we're requesting $164,400. We would match that with $37,500 of township funds and $2,500 in in-kind services from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. The township funds are already budgeted for the next couple of years for conservation and habitat work in those areas, so there's no additional funding needed. With that, I would ask if there's any questions, and then ask the board to consider action to endorse this grant submittal.
Okay, Elliot, you have your hand up. Go ahead. You're still muted, Elliot. We can't hear you. You're having trouble. There you go.
I'll move the motion, but I also want to ask the question, what kind of music would a fisherman like to hear when he or she is fishing?
What kind of music would a fisherman like to hear?
Something catchy.
Of course.
But I move the motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. All right, discussion. Betsy, you had your hand up?
Yes, yeah. Wow, I was almost speechless when I read this grant proposal. I feel like it's, we were really moving right along and offering some critical services to the properties that we now have. It's great to see us at this point. I was so impressed with the grant that I actually texted or emailed Katie to thank her for all the work, and she actually gave me a call and said that I guess one of the things I asked her was then whether she thought that this grant would be approved, and she shared a little concern that she had with the earlier situation where we were going to do a switcheroo with some of the property that had been set aside in the Grayswoods Park with, I guess it was a drainage ditch, and it was a very well-intended effort to achieve more affordable housing in the Grayswoods. But apparently that was upsetting to the Hamer Foundation, who had, again, given the $750,000 to purchase this property. So in just sort of talking things through, how can we go about sort of making amends? I think what we didn't finish in October of 2018, we touched upon the whole preservation of open space option, and I can't remember exactly what the board decided, but Katie actually shared some of that Doug had shared with her, because I know Katie talked about it. With all that said, I would actually like to request or suggest that for the pending board work items that are listed at the very end of the agenda, right now the open space preservation is actually listed as third, and in our order of priorities, I'm going to recommend that we actually bump that up to the first place, because I think the opportunity to, find some way of successfully preserving open space, and apparently there are a number of options out there, that would go a long way to maybe cementing the grant, achieving that grant that Katie has spent so much time working on. So I'm going to just propose that. I don't know if this is actually I was thinking the correct place to propose it. Should we just go ahead and vote on the
Yeah,
motion?
let's vote on this
Go ahead,
motion.
go ahead and put it at the top, but that's my motion.
Hold on.
Oh,
I think the motion, the original motion was to endorse the grant submittal. I mean, that's what we
Yes.
were.
right.
So what I propose is we vote on that motion.
I should have waited, right.
And then we'll discuss the rearrangement of the priority list. Okay.
Okay.
My bad.
Any more discussion on the motion? If not,
Thank you, Dr. Chair.
all those in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 And I say aye as well. The motion passes. So moving the priority, or rearrange the priority list to put open space preservation options to the top. I think Elliot, you were approving that or asking that we adopt that. Is that
Yes.
Yes. Any more discussion on that from the other members of the board? Yes, Anita, go ahead.
Building on what Betsy has said, should there be a supplemental statement that goes along with our endorsement of this grant, some direct communication with the foundation, clarifying or seeking to identify our commitment to the open space, which we have. I don't know, Betsy, is there any way from your conversations with Katie that a statement from the board would be supportive in her grant submission?
Actually, I think actions would speak a little bit louder than words at this point.
Okay.
So, yeah, discussion among the boards and coming up with a plan. But yeah, it would, would that it would. Yeah.
Any more discussion? Any objection to the reordering of the priority list? So this consensus of the board is to go ahead and reorder the priority list. Okay. Let's
And
move
then
on.
Doug, I'll reach out to you. I think Katie and I will reach out to you. I'm in this learning process also, so we'll talk to you offline on that.
All right, next item, 6, planning and zoning. 6A is planning commission report. Mr. Rader.
Yeah, so we are, a couple pending items we're working on is electric vehicle infrastructure. And then we're going to address bicycle parking. At our last meeting, we kind of just are starting the tip of the iceberg, which is reviewing our current sign ordinance and then comparing that to College Township and the other municipalities. And I guess like anything, I started thinking that was going to be simple and clearly will not be, but that's okay. We're learning a lot about that. And then we have the Patton Township Housing Task Force. They had a brief organizational meeting on January 26th, and that's going to be a wonderful task force. They have their first meeting on February 16th, which is next Tuesday. And I think, again, that's a lot of progress will come out of that. That's all.
Any questions or comments on the report? No? Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Item 8, consent agenda. Are there any items on the consent agenda that the members of the board, a member of the board wishes to pull so we can discuss separately?
Move approval of the agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? If not, all in favor of approval of the consent agenda, say aye.
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 Any opposed? None, so it passes. Thank you. Next item, number 9, managers report. Take it away, Doug.
Sure, there were a couple of pieces of correspondence included. Trying to get there. That I can't find at the moment. Oh yeah, I was seeing that. Asking for sponsorship of Spring Creek Watershed Authority. And I emailed Cindy that, yes, we would continue to do that. Also then, there was just our annual recycling report that we submit. I think in the past, I've reverted that to so many bags of garbage. I didn't get them out to do it, but we do recycle a considerable amount of materials, divert it from the landfill to make sure it goes back into, becomes compost and other useful materials. The late addition, I got noticed Monday or Tuesday, forget when, that we are being awarded the grant for the Abington Equine Hospital. That's $370,000 to help with get that facility up and running as an economic development job creation issue. There'll be more on that probably at the next meeting with some agreements that we need to enter into. Had the township schedule on there. We're closed on Monday for President's Day and April 2nd for Good Friday and carpet cleaning and things coming up in the future from that. That's the end of my report.
Thank you, Doug. Any comments or questions from the board? All right, seeing none, let's go on. Now we have committee reports. I think everyone has already submitted a written report, it looks like. Is there anyone who needs to make questions or comments or expand on the report? Yeah, Elliot, go ahead.
Larry made a very nice report on the meeting of the facilities committee. There's a new facilities coordinator who has just joined and was talking about planning for fixing up the buildings with heating and ventilating systems that are upgraded. And I asked at one point whether we were going to be on target to have all this done by the time the building's actually open, and suggesting that we should move along with that. And so that was the comment, because I was just concerned that if you're planning something in February and March for something that may be needed as early as July, you want to move on it.
Very good, thank you. Any other comments? Yes, Pam, go ahead.
Also, for the public safety, Sean Kaufman, I asked a question about the Veterans Medical Clinic on the vaccine. He was going to look into that for me. We hadn't heard any information about vaccine for veterans. Some were going to Altoona to the VA hospital there. I think he said one of the veterans went to Scranton. So he's going to look into getting us some information so we can pass that on to our veterans population here. I'm looking forward to what he reports back. So thank you.
Good, yeah. Any other comments? Yes, Betsy.
I just want to make a point or a confession that in true fashion, my reports are actually 2 weeks delayed. So the ones that you're seeing here were for the last week. So that's just how I roll. I apologize, but I'll be able to, I'll get you this week's next time.
Mm-hmm. Any other comments, questions? If not, we can move on. Other business. Let's see, Anita, yes, go ahead. You're muted, Anita, you're muted.
Yeah, thank you. As there was a news item, and I'm grateful to Betsy who identified the original letter, the joint statement from the State College Borough Council and the College Township Council concerning the vandalism that happened at the Unitarian Church. And I know that we have members in Patton Township who attend that church. I'm just wondering, even though this letter went out earlier in February, if what the board would think of our sending a similar letter, saying we join State College Borough and College Township, and pretty much repeating the letter that they've done. It was sent to the Reverend Carol Sissel, who's the pastor there at the Unitarian Fellowship, that it expresses the disappointment at the violation of their sacred space, empathy with them and their distress, sadness, and alarm. I believe Doug sent a copy of the letter out for people to see. I'm just wondering what the board would think of our likewise sending a letter from the board of Patton Township joining the sentiments that State College Borough and College Township have already expressed.
Comments from the board? Yes, Elliot, go ahead.
So moved.
Second.
Betsy, did you have anything else? Is-
Nope, nothing new.
Yeah,
I was
okay.
gonna
just
support it.
second. Any more discussion? So we're all in agreement. We'll take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, Doug, can you draft something for us? All right, good. Anything else? Any other business? Yes, Anita, go ahead.
One short note. The Housing Task Force was notified by Habitat for Humanity that they are working on a home that has become available in Woody Crest, and they are having an information session for folk explaining what the Habitat process is. That information session is this Friday. I realize that's short notice, but if you should know of any folk who might be interested in learning more about the Habitat house and the process of securing it, I know Doug's working on getting a link to the Habitat flyer, and this will be information that we hope to have publicly available. They're casting a wide information net.
Their website, hfhgcc.org. Habitat for Humanity, Greater Center County.
Anyway, thank you.
And I'm a former board member. Dan's a current board member.
No, I'm former now.
Oh, you former now?
Yeah, I've served I served 7 years. They conveniently ignored that my term had expired. I didn't find out until a year later.
And I'm an active on one of their committees, so.
Yeah. So we're all supporting Habitat's mission, and I still volunteer at Restore. Thank you for that information, Anita. Any other business? If not, I'll ask the board members to stay online here for exec session. So is there a motion to adjourn our regular session?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you.